On this video, we're going to be looking at price elasticity of supply. I'm going to be assuming that you know all about price elasticity of demand from previous lessons. When you were looking at price elasticity of demand, these were the things you would be looking at. Forget them completely, because price elasticity of supply is totally different to price elasticity of demand. And if you write about those things, the examiners will be happy to give you a 0, or if you get the definition right and write about those things, you might just get a mark if you are lucky. So we have to look at things from the perspective of producers. In this case, we're looking at the fresh strawberry market. So let's imagine that as a farmer, you and your workers have picked a whole load of strawberries, you've whacked them into a van and you've taken them off to market. And when you get to market, you discover that strawberry prices are twice what you expected them to be. You're going to be quite happy with that, and you're going to be thinking, I'd like to sell a few more. Now the trouble is, on that particular day, you can't sell it anymore because you've picked pretty much everything that you needed to pick. You can't go back and get more on that day because they wouldn't be picked. And if the price was to halve, you'd be faced with exactly the same situation. You can't really take those strawberries back to your farm because you've got nowhere to store them. And if you bring them to market the next day, they'll be starting to go off. So there is literally nothing you can do about it. You are completely stymied. You have to sell what you've actually got. So you've got a totally inelastic supply curve. So it doesn't matter what the price is, you've got to sell what you've actually got with you. So this is what a totally inelastic supply curve looks like. It's completely upward sloping, and that has an elasticity of supply of 0. So what could you do about it in the short run? Well, in economics, the short run, the definition is where some factors of production are variable and others are fixed. So in this case, maybe we could get in a few more workers. We could maybe plant our fields a little bit more intensively. So what could we do about that doubling in price in, say, 6 months? Well, we could probably increase production a bit. We could plant and grow a few more plants. We could perhaps pick those plants more intensively. So we're going to be able to increase our production, but probably not by that much because we haven't got total flexibility. So we have potentially an inelastic situation. We can respond, but not by much. So an inelastic supply curve is like the one you can see here. It's upward sloping and quite steep. And it will have an elasticity of supply, whatever that means, of less than 1. Well, what about in the long run? Well, in the long run, all factors of production are variable. So we could potentially buy up some fields from the farm next door. We could almost certainly plant more of our fields with strawberries, our fields that are currently being used for other things. So in the long run, we're going to be able to increase production by quite a lot if that strawberry price sticks at being doubled. So we're going to be able to be very responsive. And an elastic supply curve looks like this one here, relatively flat, and that's going to have a value of more than 1. So we have now looked at what we mean by elasticity of supply. Remember, we're not going to talk about elasticity of demand, totally different thing. And we're going to say that our supply is going to be either elastic if it's responsive or inelastic if it's unresponsive. You might want to stop now because this is a place perhaps to take a pause. So the definition of price elasticity of supply is the responsiveness of supply to a change in price. Big response elastic, small response inelastic. The formula is almost identical to elasticity of demand. It's the percentage change in quantity supplied divided by a percentage change in price. Or we can use this weirdo formula, change in quantity over original quantity multiplied by price over change in price. It's always positive because the supply curve slopes up, and basically if the price is higher, then farmers can potentially make more profit. They've got the willingness and ability to produce more. So that makes a positive being divided by a positive, which makes a positive. If you get a big response, more than 1, it's elastic. If it's 1, it's unitary. Less than 1, inelastic. 0, completely inelastic. So let's look at a real life example. So in 2022, President Putin decided he wanted to invade Ukraine, and Russia is a huge producer of natural gas. So between August 2021 and August 2022, the price of gas went up from $2.72 MMBTU, don't ask me what that stands for because I don't know, in 2021. A year later, it was $9.34. So that is an increase in price of 243%. So now we're going to look at world natural gas supplies a little bit later. So in 2021, there were 4,044 billion cubic meters of gas produced in the world. 2 years later, in 2023, there were 4,059 billion cubic meters of gas. So there was an increase, but there wasn't much of an increase. It was up by only 0.37%. So if we assume that that increase in gas was caused by that increase in price, we can now calculate the price elasticity of supply. So if we have 0.37 divided by 243, we get a price elasticity of supply of 0.0015. So it's virtually nothing. So it's almost like that first diagram that we did for strawberries, almost completely inelastic. And you might think, well, why? Well, one potential reason is that to actually bring more gas into play is a very time-consuming process, certainly more than the 2 years that I'm showing you here. You've got to find the new gas field. You've then got to exploit that new gas field to get the gas out, and that is going to take you an awful long time. You might need to get permission from local government or central government to do that. You might get opposition from pressure groups or people where the gas field is being produced. Gas field could be produced on land or it could be produced on sea. Sea, it's going to take a long time to get it out. So it's going to take you a darn sight longer than 2 years. So there isn't going to be much response in 2 years. And it may be that we got it wrong completely. Remember, in economics, we use that phrase ceteris paribus. Well, other things are bound to change. If, say, you're looking at the invasion of Ukraine, there's going to be an awful lot of things going on. There's going to be embargoes, say, on Russian gas. There's going to be stoppages for other reasons. And for all we know, that increase in natural gas could have been caused by what was happening to price years ago. We don't know that. And again, look at that price diagram for gas. You can see that huge increase between 2021 and 2022, but then you'll see a huge decrease after that. Now, you're not going to want to massively increase your production of gas knowing full well there's a fair chance that that increased price isn't going to last. You're perhaps going to want to wait for a bit of time before you make that decision to increase your supply. So there's all sorts of reasons why we get that very low figure if we've actually got an actual figure for the price elasticity of supply of gas. Obviously, if you've got a question on this, you could do a calculation. But if you get an evaluative question, then you want to get your marks by actually questioning your evaluation by your conclusion. And again, this could be a good place to pause because we've just done a practical example. So what are the factors that affect elasticity of supply? Well, we've just looked at an obvious one, and we did that for strawberries as well. Time. If you write about time on an elasticity of supply question, you probably won't be making many mistakes. So the longer the time the producers have got to adjust their supply, the more elastic the supply is going to be, because you can do stuff in the long run that you can't do in the short run. And again, in a question, you might want to consider how long that is going to be. So in the case of strawberries, we reckon we could get quite a response within a year. In the case of gas, it was going to be a number of years. So you do need to think about the actual product being produced. Now, the second factor is, are there stocks of this item available? Because if you've got stocks on hand, you can always sell from those stocks. So if you've got more stocks available, that will make your elasticity of supply more elastic. Is the good perishable? Well, in the case of strawberries, the good is perishable. In other words, if you don't consume it, it's going to go off. In the case of gas, it's not perishable. So if something is perishable, then that's going to make that good less elastic. You can't do much with those strawberries other than try to sell them. But with the gas, perhaps if the price is bad, you can store it up until price gets better. If the price is good, you can flog off some of those items that you've stored because they're not going to go off. Fourth factor is excess capacity. Does excess capacity in the industry exist? Because if it does, and we get an increase in price and we want to produce more, we can simply bring some of that excess capacity into play. So, for example, on the right hand side of my head, you can see the global demand for solar panels. And above that, you can see the potential for producing those solar panels, the capacity in China. So you can see that the potential is far greater than the current demand. So if you want to produce more, if say the price of solar panels goes up, then we can simply bring that excess capacity into play. What if you've got unemployed resources? You've got perhaps a pool of labour that you could use. Well, again, if the price is good and you want to produce more, you could perhaps bring some of those unemployed resources into play. So that would make it more elastic. What if you need specialist workers? So here we've got an ear, nose and throat specialist. So if say there's an increase in price for ear, nose and throat surgery, whatever you do with ear, noses and throat, I don't know, then you're going to need that specialist. So you can't just have anybody doing it. So if you need specialist workers, that makes supply less elastic. What about if the production process is complex? Again, if it's complex, it makes it quite difficult to supply more. So producing gas out of the sea from nothing is an incredibly complex process. So that's going to be less elastic. Digging a few strawberries, planting a few strawberry plants, relatively straightforward. So that would make that more elastic. And finally, are there barriers to joining the industry? Some industries you can get in relatively easily and some you can't. Some it could be horrendously expensive to do it. Again, it would be easy, say, for you to set up as someone who cleans your windows. It will be a darn sight more difficult for you to set up, say, as an oil producer. So one has barriers to entry, some don't. Some of those barriers to entry are simply legal requirements. If, say, you discover that the lottery is running at a huge profit, you might want to run a national lottery, but you can't do it because there's only one national lottery. Or if, say, you want to run a train line, same thing, you need permission. So finally, we're going to do a comparison between strawberries that we've looked at already and oil that we haven't. So I'm going to be doing some sort of judgment as to which is more elastic. So in each case, I'm going to be putting in green the thing that's more elastic and red the thing that's less elastic. Go and stop. So with time, we could change our strawberry production in a few months. With oil, it will take many years to find and develop wells. So with time, strawberries are much more elastic. What about stores or stocks? You can't store fresh strawberries because they go off. So that is going to make that inelastic, whereas oil, you can have stores. For example, America has a strategic oil reserve that they can release in times of trouble. So it's possible to store oil. It is not possible to store strawberries. Is it perishable? Strawberries, yeah. Oil, no. You could store oil for quite some time. So again, that makes oil more elastic. Do you need specialist workers? Strawberries, no, not really. Oil, yeah, you need specialists to drill. Before the drilling takes place, you'd need to investigate the location. So for that particular case, strawberries has gone green because you don't need specialist workers. Oil has gone red because you do. Is the process complex? Strawberries, nope. Oil, yes. Are there barriers to joining? Well, pretty much if you're a farmer, you'd be relatively easy for you to plant a few more fields of strawberries. So it's relatively low barriers to joining that market or to extending there. Oil is a horrendously expensive process, so the actual cost is going to be a barrier to joining. So overall, you've got 4 greens for strawberries and only 2 greens for oil. It doesn't mean it's a 4-2 win. It's possible to have it the other way around, but in this particular case, oil is going to be much more inelastic than strawberries.